this is Kim Speedy from 10 Sigma. Welcome to episode 113 of Transition Tuesday. Today I'll be talking about continuing to build a strong transition program. Right now I'm going to switch over to a short slide presentation to share information on how to get your students involved in their transition process.
Guiding students to take ownership in their transition process. The next steps in building a successful transition program. Last month in episode 111, we discussed the first steps in building a successful transition program, which were making transition a priority, knowing your role as a transition teacher, scheduling time for transition, and involving the students' parents and the IEP team in the transition process. The next step in building a successful transition program is to teach students to take ownership in their transition process. Three important parts of students taking ownership are students learning their role and responsibilities in their transition process, about their IEP, and how to advocate for themselves. Before getting into each part specifically, let's first discuss the student's responsibilities or role according to the law. Student responsibilities are not clearly stated in the law. They are implied. The law does state that students must be invited to their IEP meeting. For students to take ownership in the transition process, the law implies that students are actively involved or lead their IEP meeting. The law states that the school takes steps to ensure students' preferences and interests are considered. But then again, the law implies they need to explore their wants, strengths, interests, and needs through many activities, assessments, and experiences in the areas of employment, training and education, and independent living. It is also implied that from their exploration, students write or greatly contribute to their postsecondary goals. Now that we have clarified the difference between the stated and the implied law, let's take a look at a clip from episode 42 that explains the student's implied role or responsibility in their transition process. The first area is postsecondary goals. The student actively participates within their capabilities in identifying meaningful postsecondary goals. This means that the student learns about their wants, interests, strengths, and needs. The student learns about their future options for training and education, employment, and independent living. The student analyzes the options and determines current postsecondary goals. And the student contributes to the writing of their postsecondary goals. The second area is the IEP meetings. The student actively participates within their capabilities in their IEP meetings. The student describes their wants, interests, and strengths to the IEP team. The student presents their postsecondary goals to the IEP team, and the student answers questions from the IEP team. And the third area is accepts responsibility. The student accepts responsibility within their capabilities for their role in meeting the expectations of the IEP. This means that the student cooperates with the IEP team members in completing tasks defined in the IEP. The student takes responsibility for making progress toward their goals and completing tasks in the IEP. And the student actively participates in courses as written in the IEP. In order for students to carry out their role and responsibilities in their transition process, they first need to understand the IEP. Let's look at a recap of episode 106, Teaching Students About Their Transition IEP. To teach your students about their IEP and IEP meetings, start by explaining what an IEP stands for, which is an individualized education program that is a legal written document that describes the educational plan for them. And then talk about what it means to them and why they need one. The IEP talks about their disability, what skills they currently have, what skills they still need to learn, what goals they will be working on, what services or supports they will need to be successful, and where their learning will take place. And how often they need an IEP, which is written at least once a year or more. Important things for you to think about as a teacher when teaching your students about their IEP are to avoid using too many special ed acronyms and to do some pre-teaching of the special education and specifically transition terminology. Some examples would be postsecondary goals, academic and transition needs, accommodations, and progress. After you explain what an IEP is and what the roles of the different team members are at the meeting, it's important to explain to the student what they can expect at their IEP meeting. Tell them the IEP meeting is further development of their IEP and includes discussion of the assessments used to determine their strengths, needs, wants, interests, and options, their post-secondary goals, their academic and transition needs and strengths, and how their needs will be met, what services, including the amount of time the school will provide to meet these needs, how and when progress on their needs will be reported, what accommodations they need in school and work environments, what district or state testing they will be taking, and the accommodations that will be provided, and if it's a year prior to them reaching age of majority, their transfer of rights, which they probably understand the term of legal age. The last thing you want to talk to your students about is preparing for their transition IEP. First, make sure they understand transition and special education vocabulary. Give them or have them get a copy of their previous IEP. Tell them to read and make sure they understand the different transition parts of the IEP. Post-secondary goals, annual goals, transition services, accommodations they will be provided in the classroom and for testing. Then tell them to research some jobs or careers they are interested in for employment. And then think about if these jobs or careers require post-high school training. Ask your students to think about where they might want to live after high school, and depending on their job or career options that they researched, they may be living at home or in a dorm, just depends. Tell them to talk to their special education teacher about what they learned from their research and discuss possible post-secondary goals. Have them talk to their parents about their post-secondary goals based on their research and talking with their teacher. And then have them think about or write their strengths, needs, interests, and most importantly, their post-secondary goals. This will help with selecting classes, courses of study, and will help them participate or lead the IEP discussion or meeting. Again, teaching your students about their IEP and IEP meeting is a prerequisite to them leading their transition IEP meeting. For more information on student-led IEP meetings, please refer to Transition Tuesday, episode 77. In addition to understanding their IEP, for students to carry out their role, they need to learn to advocate for themselves. Let's look at a recap of episode 14 on self-advocacy. Skills that students need to effectively advocate for themselves include having a realistic view of self, or a sense of self, knowing their disability, their strengths, and their needs. Being able to communicate what motivates them. This includes their interests. Setting and working toward their own goals, which could include their post-secondary goals and other goals that they have set for themselves. Understanding their rights and responsibilities. Recognizing situations that require self-advocacy, and advocating for self when appropriate. They need to communicate, ask questions, and find supports. For today's bonus, I'll be sending you a checklist from 10 Sigma to help students begin to take ownership in their transition process.
Thank you for watching the video. I hope you use this information to help your students get more involved in their transition process. Be sure to check your email for the bonus we just sent over. If this is the first time you've ever seen an episode of Transition Tuesday, click the link below to receive the bonus. Be sure to like and share the video and leave a comment or suggestion for a future episode of Transition Tuesday. Have a great week. See you next Tuesday.